Liberals who advocate for individual self-sacrifice as a means of addressing climate change are not contributing to the solution. In fact, they're experiencing pain. Should we feel bad about the amount of carbon we've left behind? Does doing things like resolving to become vegan or taking fewer flights have any impact on climate change? Or are these kinds of personal lifestyle adjustments just a diversion from the fundamental issues? How significant is the impact of whatever we do to try to improve the climate? Hello everyone, welcome back to Darkness Unraveled. In today's video, we are going to discuss whether there is some truth to the claims that your carbon footprint is a hoax. But before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so you don't miss any of our amazing videos. And let's begin. What is meant by the term carbon footprint? The amount of carbon dioxide that is released into the atmosphere as a result of the activities of an individual, an organization, or a country is referred to as their carbon footprint. In the 1990s, two researchers from Canada came up with the concept of a footprint as a metaphor for the impact that humans have on the Earth. A decade later, the oil and gas company BP brought what was still a relatively unknown word to the attention of the general public. As part of a marketing strategy that is projected to cost $100 million per year, they popularized the concept of carbon footprints. They broadcast advertisements on television asking viewers, "What size is your carbon footprint?" They also took out full-page ads in newspapers such as the New York Times, affixed posters to billboards in airports all around the world, and bought space in newspapers. They devised a calculator so that individuals could figure it out for themselves. They shifted responsibility for the damage caused by their products onto the general population by doing so. During the same time period, they and a number of other companies that dealt in fossil fuels were extracting millions of barrels of oil each day. According to Jeffrey Supran, a researcher at Harvard University who studies how fossil fuel companies have misled the general public about climate change, leveling the playing field by referring to a company's footprint in the same way that you would refer to a person's levels the playing field in a way that misrepresentative of the true nature of the climate challenge. The footprint is a visual representation of the emissions of greenhouse gases. It reduces the enormity of the problem to that of a human footprint. The importance of society in the reduction of emissions has been emphasized by oil and gas firms. Where is the connection between smoking and the use of plastic? Even though they were fighting to eliminate legislation that limited their pollution, firms that deal in fossil fuels pushed the idea of personal carbon footprints and individual action. However, they were not the only industry to engage in that practice. The environmental organization Keep America Beautiful began running advertisements as early as the 1970s that slammed citizens for littering and urged them to recycle instead of throwing trash on the ground. On the other hand, the organization was supported by firms that manufactured plastic bottles and fought against regulations that would address the underlying cause of the issue. After that, the tobacco business developed these strategies even further. It did this by downplaying the science and running advertisements that focused on the concept of an individual's freedom to choose. This allowed the company to remove itself from the damage that cigarettes create. When tobacco firms were hauled to court by medical professionals, their defense was that deaths caused by heart and lung diseases were the fault of smokers because they had purchased their goods. According to the findings of a study, the oil giant ExxonMobil is targeting individuals while simultaneously minimizing the effects of climate change. The authors wrote that these patterns mimic the tobacco industry's documented strategy of shifting responsibility away from corporations which knowingly sold a deadly product while denying its harm and onto consumers. Companies that deal in fossil fuels have employed strategies that are comparable to those used by the tobacco industry. Is it due to the actions of large corporations? ExxonMobil stated to the German newspaper DW that it is committed to working to decarbonize high-emitting sectors by investing in technologies that help society achieve a future with net zero emissions. This response came in response to the question of whether or not the industry is shifting blame onto customers. According to a statement released by the corporation, ultimately changes in society's energy use, coupled with the development and implementation of cheap lower-emission technology, will be required. The requests for comments that were sent to BP and Shell, two additional fossil fuel companies, were not responded to. These four privately owned companies, along with the multinational oil corporation Total, are indirectly responsible for 11% of the CO2 and methane emissions that resulted from the burning of fossil fuels between the years 1965 and 2018. Only 7 firms, including state-owned businesses in Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Iran, are responsible for 20% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. We contribute relatively little to the climate problem. In the broad scheme of things, the individual carbon footprints that each of us leaves behind don't really amount to all that much. This sentiment is shared by many others. A statistic that claims that 100 firms are responsible for 71% of CO2 emissions has become a viral rallying cry for people who argue that individual action is pointless in the face of the problem. However, even while these businesses are responsible for the extraction of the oil, gas, and coal that is used to generate those emissions, the responsibility for the burning of that material is still shared with the individuals who buy their products. People are able to reduce their emissions more easily as a result of structural improvements. What may be accomplished by the actions of an individual? The International Energy Agency projects that only 4% of the necessary reductions in emissions will come from purely personal actions, such as reducing the amount that one flies or walking to work, whereas 40% of the reductions in emissions will come from policies over which the public has little control, such as making more electricity from renewable energy or using cleaner technologies in the industry. This is necessary in order to decarbonize the global economy by 2050. The remaining 55% results from changes that need a combination of actions taken by the government and choices made by engaged consumers. This involves taking advantage of government incentives and technological advancements to purchase electric vehicles, install heat pumps, or improve the insulation of dwellings and better insulate homes. That would still call for significant alterations to people's ways of living in wealthy nations. According to the findings of a study that was published in the journal Nature in November, such solutions have the potential to increase the quality of life while simultaneously halving the emissions of greenhouse gases by the year 2050. People's efforts to reduce their carbon footprint have led to a rise in interest in alternatives to meat that are derived from plants. BP and the fossil fuel business in general have greenwashed the world over the years to make it appear as though they care about making a good impact on our environment. This deception has been successful, when in fact they have been carrying out their shady dealings behind the scenes as usual. The reduction of emissions as a whole has a greater influence on society than the individual reduction of a single person's carbon footprint. For instance, the expansion of veganism has prompted businesses to invest in the development of more flavorful alternatives to meat, which makes it simpler for people who eat meat to select a plant-based burger over a steak. Individual activity is not restricted to consumer decisions. Voting and putting pressure on politicians can also cause policy changes and move society. And that's for today's video. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a like and share it with your friends and family. Let us know if you have any questions or comments in the section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more of our incredible videos. You can also watch our other videos that have been specially selected for you. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.